So this is the sense I'm very, very interested in cultural diplomacy, because as the ambassadors in particular who spoke in these days told us, cultural heritage and its promotion can represent, thank you, a great opportunity of branding a nation, of cultural diplomacy, to exercise this soft power that is cultural diplomacy. Well, let me explain also the aim of my paper. I will propose a general reflection about risks and opportunities of touristic management of cultural assets in Europe. Of course, not an articulated analysis, but a general reflection, especially linked to the opportunities cultural heritage management from an economic point of view can offer Italy and Europe and all the world in this particular situation of global economy, and especially after the explosion of the tremendous economic crisis in 2007-2008. It will be a comparative analysis, but it will focalize especially the case of Italy, and it will be a historical analysis, because I study history, I'm a historian. Well, in my opinion, there are three main elements we have to consider, to observe, to reflect on this matter. And along these three topics, I will try to develop my analysis. The issue of terminology and methodology. What do we mean by economy of cultural assets, cultural enterprise, and cultural tourism? The second one, the historical framework. How did the politics for cultural assets evolve from the beginning, from the acceptance of an aesthetic idea of cultural asset till today, an idea of cultural economy, a possibility of economic investment on cultural heritage. And the third one, of course, some final reflections on the current state of the politics. What can be an economic investment on cultural heritage? Well, let's begin from the first one. When we speak about cultural economy, economy for cultural assets and cultural tourism, we have to consider three main stages along the development as being historically. The first one, the emergence of a sensibility and an organized protectionary movement between 19th and 20th century. Till the end of the Second World War, and characterized, I think, by two fundamental elements. The first one, the aesthetic idea of cultural asset. Cultural asset is protected at the beginning, at the origins, not because of its beauty, but as an element of national identity, of national history. This is what happens, for example, in Germany, after the Constitution of the Reich in 1871, in Denmark, after the defeat of Schleswig-Holstein, of course in Spain, of course in Switzerland, also United States, with a particular attention to the landscape, to the environmental protection, and of course in Italy. The second element, very relevant, is a sort of contradiction between public and private. The recognition, I mean, of cultural heritage as public good, and the public right to enjoy it, to use it, and the mostly prevalent situation of private ownership. This contradiction sets off some struggles, quite serious sometimes, and it comes over only with the recognition in the constitutional charters, in Europe especially, of the principle of tutelage. On the example of the first one, that one of Weimar, the Weimar Constitution in 1919, that introduced this principle. The second stage begins after the Second World War in 1945 till the 70s with two mostly prevalent elements. The first one, the recognition of the public principle of tutelage in the constitutional charters. For example, in Italy, in the Republican Charter of 1948. And the second one, a sort of transformation of the concept of cultural heritage in a social and anthropological perspective. Cultural heritage begins to be considered as a testament of civilization, of the presence, of the being of human, of people on the landscape. And the third and final one, of course, the recognition of a possibility from an economic point of view of economic investment on cultural heritage. Linked to this third element, we have some peculiarities and we could say some paradoxes that characterized the economic perspective about cultural heritage. The first one, the uniqueness of cultural assets. Cultural assets is normally unique. The second one, the current use not linked to an economic use. Cultural heritage is not protected for economic ends, of course, but by itself. The third one, their future productivity, and in particular, the fact that the capacity for preservation diminishes with an increase in the engagement of preservation, and because preservation needs some choices. So what you invest for the tutelage of something is taken away, of course, from the protection, from the tutelage of something different. Well, speaking about cultural enterprise, how can we define what are the characteristics of a cultural enterprise? I propose to consider two different definitions. The first one given by John O'Hagan in this important volume of 1998. Economic externalities presenting cultural assets are related to the development of a shared common identity, first of all, to the incrementation of desirability for tourists, secondly, to the so-called option demand for future generations, thirdly, to the urban renewal and improvement of civil life, fourth and very important element. The second definition given by Salenchik and Pfeffer in 1978, cultural asset is valuable, is rare, is imperfectly imitable, is non-substitutable. And these definitions consider some typical elements that characterize cultural enterprise. Let's see. First of all, prevailing lack of for-profit motives. A cultural enterprise normally doesn't work for profit motives, but for tutelage, of course. The second one, the preeminent cultural ends. Tutelage is for culture, of course. The third one, the presence of a structured complex of resource to manage. Cultural heritage is a structured complex of elements to manage, to tutelage. And fourth, the excludability. The access to the cultural asset is regulated. It is not free. And these characters determine some other consequences. The first one, the politics of financing, the prevalence of public fundings, but also the development of private-public partnership. For example, the Coliseum in Italy, at the current state, is protected with some private investments. The second one, the problem of expenses and the pricing to cover these expenses. And third, the social sustainability of management of cultural assets. So considering these elements, what kind of definition we can give to the concept of cultural tourism? I propose to consider this definition given by the World Tourism Organization, cultural tourism is composed of all the travels of people motivated by cultural aims, such as study holidays, participation in live performances, and so festivals, cultural events, visits to archaeological sites, monuments, pilgrimages, but also the pleasure of immersing, I'm sorry for the error, oneself in the local lifestyle and everything that creates this identity and local character. Like in Glasgow, on Wednesday we spoke about Glasgow. Well, considered these elements, these methodological elements, let's see at the situation of Italy. Italy has a particular history about cultural heritage management and its politics, with some elements of similarity and some great differences respect with the other countries. First of all, also in Italy at the beginning, there was an aesthetic concept of cultural heritage. Cultural heritage was protected for its relevance as a national identity's element. The most relevant example we can quote is the case of the pivot of Ravenna. The first important law in Italy was promoted by the minister Luigi Rava, you can see in the photo, in 1905 to protect the pivot of Ravenna, but not for its beauty, for its natural beauty, but as a memory of Dante, of Boccaccio, of Italian history. The second element, a particular model of administration linked to the Napoleonic and French example. So a centralist administration with some elements of great difference from, for example, the experience of England, but also we could say from the experience also of Germany or Switzerland that introduce quite decentralized system of management. In Italy, at the origins, before the ministry, we have got a general direction for antiquities and fine arts at the center of the territory in Rome, of course, and then a network of superintendents throughout all over the territory. The third element, the contradiction between private and public, that comes over with the introduction of the principle of Article 9. The Republic promotes culture, technical and scientific research, and it preserves landscape and historical and artistic heritage of the nation. The third, a very relevant element, the role of private association. Differently from, for example, the experience of national trust that has a great role of lobbying behind the parliament, behind the government, as Dr. Ramsey said on Wednesday. The National Trust, I think, if I remember well, has till today more than 3 million members. Private associations for tutelage in Italy has a small and limited role. The most relevant experience is Italia Nostra, our Italy, we could translate, created just in 1955, so quite late, with a small, limited role. And, well, at this point, we can pose our question, when did emerge a sensibility, a perspective for an economic investment, for an economic possibility on cultural heritage? We have to observe one first thing. Cultural tourism in Italy has a great tradition, a long tradition, since the 18th century, since Goethe, for example, but also about England with the experience of the ladies of Victorian age. But the economic perspective on cultural heritage is deeply linked to the two most relevant periods, to the most relevant phases of industrialization. The first one, the Giolitti era, is Giovanni Giolitti, till the explosion of the Great War in 1914. The second one, the Italian miracle between 50s and 60s. Both in the first and in the second phase, industrialization, economic development is considered as a risk for cultural heritage. And in particular, during this second phase, some groups of intellectuals consider the development, the industrial development, as a true catastrophe. So the tutelage, the preservation, is considered against the development, against the economic development, against the industrial development, especially about the matter of urban renewal, urban damages. But we had to also to remember that in this second phase, some voices emerge that indicate a new possibility to link the category of preservation to that one of promotion, of valorization. So an economic perspective, an economic possibility about cultural heritage. Especially during the work of the most relevant commission of study for the cultural heritage in Italy, that one directed by the Christian Democrat deputy Francesco Franceschini between 1964 and 1966. And especially to link the tradition to the modernity, to the ancient and the new. This trend has been growing up more and more during the years till today, when, especially after the explosion of the crisis between 2007 2008, cultural heritage is considered as an opportunity. If we have a look about the data of cultural tourism in Italy, we can see lots of people come to Italy to visit art cities, especially Rome, of course, but also Venice, Milan, Florence, Ravenna, of course, and especially from Japan, but also, as you can see, from United Kingdom, from Spain, for example, and so on. We had to consider then the European Commission's report indicates between 2009 2011 more than 375 million people spent his holidays in cultural tourism. Cultural tourism in Europe has become the 40%, almost the 40% of the entire touristic trade. And so in Italy. And why? Why people come in Italy? For the sun, of course, for the sea, of course, for the landscape, for the food. That's very important, very good, almost like that one of Trinidad and Tobago. Also, of course, for our heritage. So the branding, the brand of Italy is Italy itself, we could say, is its tradition, is its landscape, is its food. So just to come to a brief conclusion and a proposal of new questions. Can be an economic investment on cultural heritage an opportunity to relaunch Italy and Italy within Europe, and Europe in particular within the world? Well, I have to say, I think it can be the only possibility, because each country needs some strategic sectors of mass production for its economy. But cultural tourism can be a great opportunity. The 7% of the Italian income spent during the 2011 in cultural tourism. And in this sense, two more final things. The Expo 2015 can be a great opportunity for Italy, organized in Milan for next year. And also, another thing, a final thing, academic institutions, universities, centers of research can and have to work together, I think, to try to build a network about cultural heritage in a new perspective, also on an economic perspective. In Italy, in this, our center, we are trying to prepare a project to be submitted to the European Commission in the program Horizon 2020, building relations for an interactive development and growth of Europe, to try to build a network of institutes, of academic institutes, of centers of research that focalize this matter. Italy could become the bridge between different parts of Europe, between, in particular, East and West of Europe. So, this is my proposal, this is my final suggestion. Of course, everyone interested is welcome. Everyone interested can contact me. This is my address. Thank you very much for your attention.